Hello and welcome to my BookTube channel, Jack in the Book Stack, where I talk about a wide variety of book genres and the bookish lifestyle. And you are going to be getting just that in this reading vlog. It's spooky season, so I had to pick a theme that was truly horrific, truly gruesome, and what better theme than cannibalism? Seems kind of niche, right? Like, I don't know if I've seen anybody else do a theme of cannibalism, and so I'm questioning my sanity and what it says about me that like I'm excited about this, but I'm so excited. I have had some books on my TBR for a while and I have had this idea for a long time. So very much looking forward to this. I have some plans during this time frame. It should be like roughly a week. I don't really know. I'm not gonna put pressure on myself. We're just gonna go with it. But another obsession I have right now is, and I don't know what started this, but the idea of making my own dog treats or like supplemental things to add to my dog's kibble. I used to raw feed my last dog, my German Shepherd, Nikita. She had allergies to the preservatives in kibble, so I raw fed her exclusively for years. It was exhausting. I don't want to get to that level, but I do have some plans to make some little treats for them, and it fits. It fits with this cannibalist theme, and you're going to see more of that. But as far as the books, the first one that I want to start with is The Eyes Are the Best Part by Monica Kim. This edition is my Evernight exclusive, the membership service that sends you books quarterly, like special edition horror books. And really looking forward to this. I think it's a feminist kind of horror, but the obsession is with eating eyeballs. So I think that does fit with cannibalism. So I'm excited to check this one out. Kind of disturbed already. Like I said, I don't know what it says about me, but I'm excited about reading about cannibals. I might go like vegetarian or vegan after this. We will see. That's always a possibility. But let's go ahead and jump into the reading vlog right now. This is the ultimate cannibalism book in which all other ones are going to be compared. Trying to make my own dog treats today. Yummy, yummy. Okay, so I'm gonna dehydrate these. Here, let me open this real quick. Oh, need all the hands. I grease the tray with coconut oil, which is safe for dogs. Spread those out on the tray, and then I'm gonna try to dehydrate these for like 3 to 4 hours. See how that turns out. And I'll just put that back in the fridge. Maybe I'll make another batch tomorrow if it turns out okay. These dogs are so spoiled. So they're going pretty good. I realized the recipe I'm using didn't have a temperature for the dehydrator, so I bumped it up to 140. I'm at about the halfway point, and I don't know how well the coconut oil prevented it from sticking, because I'm trying to like rotate them to prevent them from like melting through to the bottom, like my little catch tray there, and they're kind of sticking a little bit. So that's the progress at the halfway point. Okay, so I found some other recipes online that said for chicken liver dog treats to do 160 degrees for 3 to 4 hours. So I bumped it up, obviously not for the whole time, but it has been in there for about 5 hours. So I need to take it out because I'm going mini golfing. So this will be the batch. I'm not sure if they're as crispy as I want them to be, but I think they'll be okay. Like, I want to go for more crunchy. These might, like, some of these pieces might be still kind of juicy on the inside, but I'll just like put them in the fridge. I think they'll still be fine to give to the dogs, but I wouldn't keep them like air temperature. So I'm gonna let these cool off, get to room temperature while I'm out golfing, and I'm sure the dogs will love to test them out. they're pretty low maintenance in terms of their preferences. They'll love it. So there's the inside of like one of the thicker pieces. You can see what I mean, that it's a little bit juicier than what I'm going for, but I mean, it'll serve its purpose for round one, but I definitely have ideas of what to do for the next batch. The molds turned out pretty good. So here is Tinsley's pumpkin turmeric frozen treat, and then Jesse James, and it's yogurt, pumpkin, carrot, turmeric. Then I'll give them a little bit of liver jerky, yummy, yummy. Let's see what they think. Oh, and sweet potato chips. Oh, she ate the liver first. Oh, and Jessie went for the frozen treat, I think. Oh, wow, Tinsley took out her sweet potato. My meat eaters are getting some more treats. So I ordered more trays, and in here I have pork liver and beef liver, and then some sweet potatoes. So I'm gonna try for 160 for about 5 hours, although the sweet potatoes will just take about 2, but I think they'll be happy. All right, I finished The Eyes Are the Best Part, and I love this book. 5 stars, 5 stars. Now, it's not perfect, and we'll get to that in a second, but I had such a good time with this. So disturbing. So this book, it says on the inside flap that it is a feminist psychological horror. And that is exactly how I would describe this. A lot of the horrific stuff is in our main character's mind. I mean, there is a plot, and it's very fascinating, but it's a lot of this like descending into madness and this obsession with eating eyeballs. The other thing I wanted to tell you is that on GoodReads, there's a blurb from the New York Times, and it says, "The book is violent, smart, gruesome, and wildly original. This novel pulls readers into a horrific world of murder and cannibalism while also critiquing misogyny, exploring Asian fetishization and stereotypes, sharing what it's like to navigate 2 cultures, and telling a touching story of a family in turmoil." And then looking at Storygraph, it says that this is a must-read for fans of feminist horror and dark psychological thrillers who are drawn to stories that explore the complexities of Asian women's experiences, family dynamics, and the darker aspects of the human psyche. And those 2 things really capture like the tone and the vibes of this book. And something that I really love about horror, and why I rated this 5 stars, is I like when there's some social commentary, some depth, a good solid why to the horrific stuff that's going on. And this book truly, truly delivered. And I like specifically the Asian fetishization. I have a tough time with that word. Fetishization of Asian women. That was very, very like in your face, huge part of this plot, and also gives you a strong, strong, good for her kind of tone, which again, I love that in my horror, because here on this BookTube channel, we support women's rights. We also support women's wrongs. So fantastic. The plot I want to keep kind of high level for you, because horror is always good going in blind, and I think I summarized pretty well what this book will deliver for you. But this book is about Ji-won, And oh my god, I hope I'm pronouncing her name correctly, because the pronunciation of names was like a huge sticking point in this book. And so I'm like, oh my gosh, okay, can I pronounce this? I hope I do this character justice. Ji-won, she is a college student. She lives with her mom and her 15-year-old sister, and their family dynamics are changing. They're having a tough time. Their mom in particular is having a tough time. And it's kind of going through their story, and then Ji-won's growing obsession with eyeballs. So I guess in Korean culture, and in many cultures, but this family is Korean, it's good luck to eat the eyeball of the fish, like that they serve for dinner. And so they're like talking about eating it for good luck and whatnot, and then that evolves and she starts having all these dreams about eyeballs, and it's like a growing obsession, these eyeballs. And now the dreams are the critique I have on this book. I don't like dream sequences in any book because it's really confusing to know what's true and what's not. I think because they're so common, like the dreams represent like the growing obsession. I mean, I can see the point of them. I don't always like them. I mean, I still rated it 5 stars, so it didn't kill my enjoyment of the book, but I never really loved dream sequences in books. So that was like my one critique why I say it's not perfect. Because I'm like, is this really happening or is this a dream? I'm lost. My other critique of this book, I absolutely loved the descriptions of the cannibalistic features. It really hits all the senses. The consistency, the taste, the look, like all your senses are triggered with this, and it was gross and it was disturbing. And I loved it so much that I wanted more of it. I kind of wanted more of it in the plot, and there was such an emphasis on the psychological horror, which was great. It was just that Monica Kim did such a good job, and I'm so disturbed to say that I want more cannibalism in the book. But it was just so well done, and I had such a reaction to it that I wanted more. And I'm like, I'm terrified what this means. Like, telling you guys this, I don't know. But the other thing, reading this book, listening to the audiobook while I was preparing dog treats was a whole experience in its own, because I was dealing with like chicken, pork, and beef liver, raw meat, like making the jerky. I made the dogs like a bone broth, so I had beef feet, beef bones, and beef tendon that I put in the pressure cooker to make like a broth, and that was one treat. And then I blended like the tendons and then made frozen treats from that. So dealing with all this meat. Oh, and then I got them chicken feet and chicken hearts as well, that I'm making treats out of. So dealing with all this raw meat while listening to this audiobook was disturbing in a whole other way. It really, really was. I recommend, and yet I don't recommend, because it makes it so much more realistic. Luckily there were no eyeballs, and this really emphasized the eating of eyeballs. And particularly our character loves blue eyes. I have blue eyes, so that added like another personal touch. But yeah, just all the personal touches to the experience of reading this, I think also contributed to my 5-star rating, because it was just, all my senses were triggered. All of them. This was amazing. I have my next Cannibal book, and what's great is I have the paperback, but it is also available on Kindle Unlimited. So wanted to let you guys know that you can always check that out and read it as part of your membership. But I also wanted to show you this Kindle setup, because I always said I was not going to be one of those girls that had the Kindle stand, and here I am. So this is like my setup, because look, I can lay on the couch. I have my little remote control here, my little page turner, and I can just sit here with my arms nice and cozy under the blanket, and I can click the button. It is not the best fit, so I don't know if I recommend this particular Kindle stand, because it said it could fit with pop sockets, and it does not. So it's like kind of, you can see like half on, half off the stand. It doesn't quite fit, and that's a bummer. So I'm not gonna link this particular stand because I kind of had to rig it to meet my needs, but man, this thing is amazing. I am so excited to read about the next Cannibal. the real reason I wanted this Kindle setup was because my hands and arms get so tired holding a book or the Kindle, and my neck in particular gets like stiff and sore. And so like this setup, I can just lay on the couch and it like moves. So it's very, very flexible. I can move around. I'm not stuck sitting in the same position to read my Kindle book. So I really, really like this. I have found that I read for so much longer with this setup, and I really, really enjoy it. All right, so I've already shown you guys my yogurt, carrot, pumpkin treats and my jerky, so I'm not gonna go through that whole spiel, but the other treat I wanted to show you was this is the blended tendon cartilage mixture that came from the bone broth, and it's just so fun. It's like this gummy texture, like that's what it's like when it's cooled, and I put it in those. And then this is the actual bone broth, so it has like this gelatinous kind of texture, which is really fun when it's chilled. When it's warmed, it is a liquid format and it hydrates the kibble. So this is like super yummy. So I might warm this up a little bit actually for the meat. So it's kind of good. And then in here I have the chicken hearts, but I'm not gonna gross you guys out. Well, spaghetti was initially a really good idea for dinner tonight, but now I'm less than thrilled with the addition of the Italian sausage. Ugh. I am here at my local library to update my library card for the next year, and I thought it was as good of a time as any to update you on Brother, because I finished this horror book, and this was not the vibe. So I heard this had cannibalism, which is why I put it on my TBR to read it, but really cannibalism was such a minor element of the plot. Really what this was about was a very, very abusive family. We follow this family through the perspective of Michael. I think he's about like 19 years old. He has a sister, he has an older brother, and he has parents. And there are a lot of abusive dynamics going on in the family. And Michael is this sweet, innocent guy who is forced into violence, but like he doesn't feel it in his heart. He does it because his family kind of forces him to. And he's just a sweet, sensitive guy, and they abuse him. And so I felt most of the story like this wasn't fun. This wasn't a good time. And I get it's horror, so it's supposed to make you uncomfortable. So I'm not going to be mad at a book for doing its job and being horrific. But this is the kind of horror that like I don't find fun. Like I want to be disturbed, but in like a gross fun way. And this just made me feel disturbed in a sad way. And the first element of cannibalism wasn't until beyond the 50% mark. And it was like mentioned, but it didn't give me the vibes I was looking for in terms of like, you know, how I talked about the last book, you had like the consistency, the feeling of it, the look of it, the taste of it, like that really grossed me out. There wasn't any of that. So I'm not going to dive too much into the plot, because if this is a book that you're interested in, I kind of want to leave it to you to have that experience. I will say that there was some intricacies in the plot that were very smart, very interesting. The why behind the horror was really good, and kind of like the plot twists were good. So I'm kind of harping on the plot that I didn't like it because it was horrific with this like abusive family. But if you're going into this book with that expectation, there is some elements of the plot that I think can be enjoyable. Just like the disturbing nature of the horror, the why, I say. And that's what I say with horror, is I really like there to be a purpose or a why behind it that's like satisfying. And while I don't agree with the why, it was satisfying in terms of like, okay, I understand why you're so hateful and why you're doing this. So that was Brother. Not good for cannibal vibes, not good for my personal horror vibes, but hey, every book has its audience. only time in my life I have heard this word before is in an episode of The Big Bang Theory. I am shocked to see it here in the wild reading this book. And if you have not seen that episode of Big Bang Theory, a homunculus is a very small human or humanoid creature. Homunculus. 30% of the way into this book, and we have our first sign of cannibalism. But what I'm really enjoying here, and what I'm a little bit disturbed by, is because this book focuses on the culinary arts so much, I'm disturbed that I'm feeling a little bit hungry now. I am so curious to know if this is true, but not so curious that I'm actually going to Google it, because that is a little bit disturbing to know. I am never going to forget this part. So this is talking about how our English language loves a cannibal, because in sports we don't kill the other team, we demolish them, we devour our opponents. And then our appreciation for babies, we say we can eat them up, and then we ravish our lovers. So, really, really interesting point here. I will not forget that. I don't know, I'm pretty sure that is not the thought running through my head right now. Although, maybe if he doesn't take the trash out? I just finished my read of A Certain Hunger, which is a feminist literary horror about 51-year-old food critic named Dorothy. Dorothy loves food. She reviews it for a living, critiques it, and I love reading about food. And now I'm not talking about the whole cannibalist thing yet. I'm talking about legitimate food. I love the descriptions of the different flavors and pairings and consistencies, and I just have so much appreciation for it. So I love reading that stuff. Dorothy is legitimately a psychopath, and so it was very interesting to be in her mind, especially when she provides her feminist views on the roles of women. I enjoyed her monologues on that. Very fascinating. I highlighted a lot. She is also very promiscuous. She enjoys her spicy time. She is unapologetic about it. And so it added kind of like this gritty element to it when she's like out seducing people and in different places. And that was very fascinating, kind of like a good for you kind of vibe. When we did get to the cannibalism themes after roughly the 30% mark, Dorothy brought her same high standards to those meals as she did with everything else that she eats. And it was confusing for me because I was salivating with like her normal restaurant meals, and she brought that same care over to these dishes. And she's talking about, you know, how she was seasoning it, how she was preparing it, what she was going to pair it with, what wine she was going to pair it with. And I'm like, I'm confused because this also sounds really good. I don't know what this says about me. There was also a lot of detail in how she acquired the meat for these dishes, which adds to that horror element, that thriller suspense vibe. So this is a very character-driven book, but there is plot, there is horror, there is gore. So it was a good mix for me with all of that. Sometimes it did meander too much into Dorothy's monologues and her rambles, and that got a little bit frustrating for me. So I landed on a rating of this one at 4.25 because the writing style was like 5 stars, but the writing style was also like 3.5 stars for me. It was a mixed bag because I highlighted so much. There was so many beautiful statements. The vocabulary was out of this world. Words I had to look up because I wasn't sure what they meant. But then sometimes I got really distracted because I'm like, we're in this suspenseful moment. We don't need to go off on her full tangent of thoughts. And so sometimes it was a little bit frustrating. And then also the ending wasn't as satisfying as I would want. But that satisfaction I kind of get in like thrillers. And when you remember that this is like a literary horror, that's, you know, there's not necessarily a conclusion all tied up in a bow. I mean, it did conclude, there's no like ambiguous ending or like open ending, but very, very much literary in that it's in the writing style. It's in that you can immerse yourself in this and just poetic. It's so weird to say that a story about a cannibal is poetic. I would definitely recommend A Certain Hunger to those that are prepared for a literary horror, really character-driven, in the mind of a complete psychopath. Okay, there's a little bit of a plot twist here. I originally really wanted to read Desperate Passages. It's a book that I researched that is about the Donner Party, which is a very famous survival story where the folks had to resort to cannibalism. And that was going to be my nonfiction for the month. However, as you can see here, there's only an option to open it in Libby. Unlike this one, where you read it with Kindle. There is not a way for me to open this book on my Kindle. And I don't know about you, but this looks miserable. This looks absolutely miserable to read on my phone. I don't want to do that. I want to do my Kindle. And I cannot find this at another library. I can't find it in another format, like even audio or physical, like checking out from my library. So I've had to adjust. I was talking to a friend who mentioned a situation of a stranded rugby team that was struggling to survive and had to face the decision of cannibalism. And so he recommended this book, which talks about that situation. It's a plane crash in the Andes, and I think that's a difficult decision that they're faced with. So I'm gonna give this one a shot for my nonfiction cannibalist option. Hopefully it delivers. Hopefully it delivers, but change of plans. I didn't show you guys the process of making it, but I did make some additional jerky. I made some beef jerky and some chicken jerky in the dehydrator. It's like just sliced up chicken breast and beef something. So that turned out really good. The dogs love it. So this is like my frozen bag. And I've just been taking them out every night and defrosting them for the next day. The dogs love it. Y'all, it is an obsession at this point. Upgrading my game yet again. Okay, here's my haul from the Asian grocery store that I'm gonna work on dehydrating. I got some salmon belly, which so happy I have a new hydrator that I can put outside, because I imagine this will smell just like the whole smelt. These are frozen, so I'll have to do those later, but that's one option. And then I have 2 packages of chicken feet. So these I need to clip the toenails off of because they're sharp when they're dehydrated. These need to be at a lower temperature than everything else because you don't want bones to splinter. So these might be its own dehydration batch. There are many things that are frozen, so won't be able to do these today, but I got beef heart and beef liver, pork ears. I love giving my dogs those like smoked pig ears, so I'm excited to make my own. Then I got pork melt, which is pork spleen. It's another secreting organ that's very healthy for dogs. Chicken hearts. I got just some standard chicken breasts to make some jerky out of, and then pork kidney, which again, so happy I can put this outside because these organs get really, really stinky. And also these things are gonna have to run for a long time, so I really don't wanna blow out the motor in the one that I've been using because I use that like for my cooking. So this will be fun. Another raw meat alert. If you don't want to see it, close your eyes. But here's the new dehydrator, and like, look, it is small. I was not expecting it to be this small, but here is what I'm going to do. So I have 2 trays of the salmon. I'm surprised it took up that much space. Then I have 2 trays of pork kidney, and it's kind of like melting through a little bit. So I tried for this one using like the other tray that they provide, so hopefully that won't melt through. I'll test it. And then I have some chicken hearts cut in half. So I am going to take this outside because these will stink up the house for sure. So I'm gonna take it outside and set it and see how long it takes. final results are that it turned out okay. Everything shrinks up and gets a lot crunchier. I think the chicken jerky I made is the best. It's like super crispy. And the salmon is okay. It's super oily. So definitely need to keep this in the fridge because it's not terribly crispy, but overall I think my meat eaters are going to be pretty happy. I just finished Alive, which is the story of the Andes survivors. And first and foremost, I am shocked that I had no idea of this tragedy that happened in the 1970s before this. I'm really appalled at my lack of knowledge of this situation. When this book was recommended to me, I was told that it was a story of a rugby team that was involved in a plane crash in the Andes between Argentina and Chile, and they had to resort to some difficult decisions. And spoiler alert, those decisions did have to do with cannibalism. So going into this book, I had some questions. I was wondering how long it took the survivors to actually eat human meat. I had questions if everybody partook, because I was interested in kind of like an experimental and a control group to see the differences between those who made the decision and those who did not. And I was also curious if they ate the people that did not survive, or if it was like a Lord of the Flies situation and they turned on each other. And, you know, I wouldn't say this book is about cannibalism. Truly, at its core, it is a survival story. And we follow this story from before the plane takes off. We meet the different people. Saying characters doesn't seem right because these are real life people. But following the people that were on the planes, like learning a little bit about their history, their roles, their families, their social status, things they like to do. So we have like a little bit before that. And then we had the actual plane crash, which I was most worried about because I'm actually a really nervous flyer, and so I wasn't sure if I'd be able to read it, but I was. It wasn't like a really long scene. And then we follow their time when they're stranded, and then we follow like their rescue, and then after the rescue, like how they adjusted. Now, I really love survival stories, and knowing that this is nonfiction makes it all the crazier. And this is a great time of year to read it, although it would be very atmospheric for the winter time when it's very cold out because they are stranded like in the snow. But the plane crash happened on Friday the 13th. In like 1972, I believe. And so that was really eerie because we're coming up on the anniversary of it in like Friday the 13th, and like, oh my gosh, so creepy. So I loved the story, which again, it feels weird to say this because this is like a tragedy that actually happened to people. So to say that it brought me entertainment seems very, very shallow. But I'm trying to like be respectful in how I'm describing this. It was just very, very fascinating, the decisions that they had to face for their survival. And so for rating this, 5 stars, loved that. The writing style of this book left something to be desired. First of all, I take offense to the prologue. I mentioned I had no knowledge of this situation. And so this book was really written for people that did have knowledge of it, because the prologue summarizes the accident, how many survived, like how many were involved in the accident, how many survived at the end, how they were rescued, how long they were stranded. It tells you everything. And then it says, this is the story of the events in between that. And it really irritated me because the story is so suspenseful. The survivors were trying so many different things to survive and get rescued, and you already know, like I was spoiled, right? Like I know this attempt wouldn't work because we're not out the amount of days until they were rescued. Or we know this survival tactic is not going to work because there's too many people surviving right now and we know the final number. And so the writing really bugged me, and it was not as detailed in areas that I wanted it to be. It was like too high level in areas I really wanted to know more about. And I also think if this took like the writing style of like a fiction novel, it could have been really good. At times it felt like it was just listing out facts, which is fine, I guess, for a nonfiction, but then there were some parts where they were like quoting conversations. And so the book it didn't have an identity of what it wanted to be. And this story is so suspenseful that I think it would have made a really good like fiction type story that like fleshed out the characters and their personalities and their dynamics within the group, like based on true events. That was the style I was craving more from this story, and it just was written in a way that kind of kept me at arm's length a little bit. Now, speaking on the cannibalism. So the time it took from when the accident happened to when they made the decision to eat human flesh did not take nearly as long as I would have expected. And I kept thinking to myself, what would I have done in this situation? Yeah, I don't think I would have hesitated. Like, if it's a matter of survival, like, I have no ethical qualms about this, but they really debated this decision, and then some people felt strongly about it than others, and there was a huge religious aspect to this because the group was very, very religious, and so they were really grappling with this decision. But I also really like the conversation of, okay, what's okay to eat versus what's not, what has the most vitamins, and so like the areas of the body, and then how to prepare it. Like, do they eat it raw? But they really had problems with the texture and just understanding like what they were doing. So then they would try and dry it out in the sun when the sun was out. And then they wanted to cook it, but then there was a debate of how that cooks off like a lot of the proteins in it and shrinks the size of the meat, and you know, they're facing starvation. They need as much as possible. And then there was the emotional attachment. Like, these are their friends. Like, people that perished in the crash were their family members and their friends, and the whole like emotional dilemma of like needing this meat to survive, but like that's like Aunt Susie right there. They were also very, very lucky that it was a snowy environment, because I live in the desert, so I have no concept of like meat being preserved like in the snow. They were so lucky for that. Like, here in Arizona, like, you'd be toast because it's so hot here that meat would rot so fast. So it's like the weather had an environment that was very unforgiving and presented its own challenges, but really, really helped them out in that regard. And speaking of that, just all the elements of survival were just incredible to read about, because these survivors, they faced like event after event of, you know, not only the crash and then surviving injuries and illnesses and diseases and starvation and the elements of it just being so cold, and then other elements of the environment like really working against them, and then trying to find rescue. But oh man, it was a nail biter. This was a really good book, and the nonfiction aspect really closed out my reading vlog quite well when it comes to this theme. So I think this was perfect. It was a lot more scientific, a lot more, you know, kind of thought-provoking with the ethics and what would you do in that situation to survive, and also how society reacted when the survivors were brought back and everybody found out what they did. There was some shocking things there and some not so shocking things, but this was just an incredible read. I absolutely recommend it, and I think setting your expectations that, you know, the writing style was a little bit dry, but the story itself is so compelling that it doesn't take away from the enjoyment. I think my overall rating of this one comes to a 4.25, and I would absolutely recommend it. So this was a solid reading vlog and solid reading theme. I'm kind of terrified how much I enjoyed myself. I can officially say this is a horror trope that I really, really enjoy, but there's other genres that really fit this trope as well. Okay, maybe just nonfiction, because I don't think I'd really want like a romance that has to do with cannibalism. That sounds frightening. But a horror trope and maybe nonfiction, incredibly fascinating. So thank you so much for hanging out with me while I made some dog treats and read some Cannibal books. This was so much fun, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video.